where they live, south of town.
I didn't get any at my house.
We didn't get any either.
Isn't that wild?
It is crazy. It's like little tiny pockets. But when he said, "How much rain did you get?" He said, I told him, and he said, "Oh my gosh, we're flooded." We're gonna mold. We're gonna mold.
Well, I was growing mushrooms in my yard.
Me too. I have a few.
Kidding. Nacogdoches, they're downtown flooded, and it damaged a bunch of buildings. Ready, team? All right. I'd like to officially call to order this meeting of the Parks and Downtown Improvement Corporation, and I'll ask everyone to stand as Hillary leads us in an invocation. Everyone without. Lord, we just thank you for this morning, for time to stop before we begin our work, honor you, to recognize your hand in every decision that we make. May we be good stewards of the resources that you have given us, and may we be aligned with your will for the future of Carroll. We ask these things in your holy name. Amen. Thank you. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Carol, oh Carol.
working on that. Do we have any visitors that we need to hear from this morning? All right. At this time, I'll ask you all to consider approval of the minutes from our March 10th meeting. And I'll entertain a motion when you're ready. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, up next, we have our financial update brought to us by Raylan Smith.
So I do have an updated just in case you were wondering. What you have in your packet is just an overall view of the CO funds and kind of the status of those. So just to remind you all how much was out and kind of where we are on that spending. And then the other page that I just handed out is just your this fiscal year budget. Obviously, we have spent some with the facade reimbursement program. You still have outstanding the Anderson and Griffith Building Partnership. And we've spent a little bit on the downtown capital improvements whenever we had some of the landscaping cleaned up. So overall, everything looks really good.
Questions for Raylan? The financial update for our CO, is that separate, or can I ask you a question?
Yeah, no, please.
On the, I guess, second column of numbers where we show we've basically, I don't know if it's spent or allocated.
Allocated.
The 1.5 million for consultant fees, restrooms, and some construction at Breezy Hill. And then we've already spent, allocated and spent, our lighting in Ben Gill, I think, and then Breezy Hill lighting. This $325,000 for Breezy Hill land acquisition is something we have a question about because we don't show having approved that. So if you'll mind checking with.
So there is an item in executive session regarding real estate, and so I'll update you on the appraisals and the parcels. From the last time we spoke about this was the December 21st meeting, and so I'll provide you an update
Okay.
to that at the end of the meeting, if that's okay.
That works. Thank you. No reason to approve a financial report. It is what it is. Let's move into our portion of the meeting for new business and begin by discuss and consider priority park board projects, and I'll call on Carnell.
Good morning, everyone. Before I get into the meat of the presentation, I want to address our next steps involving you all, followed by the city next steps that may impact your future projects. Let's see. Not working. No, I'm just forward. Thank you. All right. First, just ask you a few questions. What are our top priority maintenance concerns, improvements at each of our parks from now to FY26? Whether it be parking lot improvements, scoreboards, drainage, or playground equipment. What funding sources are we going to use for our top priority projects? Are we going to use paddock funds, general fund, capital? How do we prioritize these projects based on our different parks? What determines what we're going to use first? Once we determine our improvement projects, then we need to request funding from the board. For example, we want to use the paddock funds to complete acquisition at Breezy Hill, which we just previously discussed. And we also want to extend the sidewalk also in that area north of Polk Street at Breezy Hill Park. For other future items we want to discuss is pavement rehabilitation, safety concerns around our high traffic areas around our parks, and the acquisition of the Casey Barn at Blanche and Nash. The Ben Gill basketball fencing is in poor condition, and that needs to be addressed as well as safety concerns around our parks, such as graffiti and vandalism. At Arley White, the city next steps, we plan to expand the park north to Polk Street through developer partnerships with the help of our ISO. At Breezy Hill Park, we're completing upgrades to the basketball courts with current donations. For all this do not know, that's the Jamie Foxx donation project that Mr. Sims has previously discussed. We will also continue development at Crossroads through developer contributions and the Texas Park and Wildlife Grant. We acquired a site from the county, and we also demoed through the proposed upcoming certificate of obligations for a proposed pocket park on Delphine and Nash. At Kings Creek, we're going to reapply for the Texas Park and Wildlife Grant, and we're also going to continue with landscaping on I-20 right-of-way. For Stallings Park, we're going to continue with the implementation of the sidewalk and drainage improvements at Stallings on the Temple Street Drainage Project through the Stallings Improvement Fund developer partnerships. And then for the last item, this is the discussing Councilwoman Velasquez new council district and the Delphine Nash Pocket Park being in that area. For Ben Gill, we have several items. We have the streets and parking lot rehabilitation in various locations. This is going to be funded through our CO and general fund. The basketball court rehabilitation, which is current year to date, we're going to use capital. That's estimated to be $38,000. The pool slide replacement project is anticipated to finish this summer, hopefully the beginning of pool season. That project is ongoing, and it is anticipated to be $750,000. For our future items, we have a number of items such as core infrastructure, such as drainage and utilities, Lions Club Lane, parking at the Chamber, and the Tiger Park Playground over at the Terrell ISD Stadium. And a big ticket item is our town square, which is funded through our tax increment reinvestment zone and CO. The acquisition of the land is near its completion. For the future Terrell Arboretum, next steps will include drainage and engineering. This is an ongoing project as well through the Stormwater Fund, and the infrastructure planning is through the tax increment reinvestment zone. We will continue through partnerships, and land dedication is anticipated through the Arboretum Estates project. I'm not 100% sure exactly. I was not shown this project. Thank you. For the Big Brushy Creek Nature Preserve, we will also continue planning through the partnerships and land dedication agreed upon in the approved North Spur project. And then the College and Hattie Park, we've already acquired the land, but we're working on getting donations or grants, or a possible combination of the two to get this ready for site development. Now, for the actual meaningful part of the presentation, we have the park board. We met on April 20th to discuss paddock projects, recommendations that are listed in order by priority. And then we came back on April 27th to discuss and consider those recommendations. The park board's vote was unanimous, and you will see that on the next slide. I'll give you a moment to look at that. But you can see as Ben Gill, the #1 priority was the replacement and rehab of the walking trail wooden bridge. This is a bridge located by the pavilion, crossing over to the pool. We have the resurface of the multipurpose court, which is, I think that's the basketball court, the larger portion of it. And then we have the resurface of the tennis court. and then the new lighting at both of those areas. Number 5 will be scoreboards at all of our fields: football, softball, baseball, soccer. And we have irrigation as well for softball and soccer, which the park board agreed to as long as the city has approves a budget that keeps up with the maintenance of that irrigation. For Breezy Hill Park, they wanted to add another modular restroom since the current restroom is in poor condition. I know that it's plans for one to go up, but we also want to budget for another one. We also want to install new picnic tables and benches, replace 5, add 3, install 4 new grills, and also have a scoreboard at the new Breezy Hill ball field. At Arlo White Park, there's no restroom currently, so we want to add a modular restroom, resurface the basketball court, install court lighting, and also add and replace 4 picnic tables and benches. For Stallings Park, continue with the current drainage project, no recommendations at this time. And for Kings Creek, Trails Grant, play area lighting, since people have complained about it being dark over there in that area. And then for our other parks, College and Hattie Park and Crossroads Park, no recommendations at this time, since no site development has been developed currently.
Can I pause you for a couple questions?
Yes.
This is a lot of information.
Yes.
And I want y'all to ask questions too. What first comes to mind is, was there a needs assessment conducted?
So the first thing on April 20th, they discussed what would be safety concerns, and that was their top priority. And then after that, they listed things that that they wanted or the parks needed. So, for example, you have Arlo White Park not having a restroom, and then somebody from a couple blocks down, they can't run home. So that was a definite need for that park.
Like tennis court comes to mind. I haven't been out to the tennis courts in years. I remember not in the not too distant past
Yes, ma'am.
being resurfaced. But has someone been out there and said it needs to be?
It gets used a lot.
Good.
And, you know, we've had Terrell ISD use it. We've had a number of people from out of town come in and use it. So rather get it done before it gets too late.
Okay. Then my second question is, are all these in line with our parks plan?
Not all of them, but most of them are, just based off of, you know, there were some added items as well, just because they weren't necessarily on the plan, but they were needed.
Not necessarily the time for feedback, but do y'all have any questions around clarity at this point?
I do. So on the next steps for the city funding, you guys basketball court rehab has been funded, but then it says resurface the multipurpose court. So are those different things, or are those the same? Has the city already funded that priority is my question.
Yes, but prices have gone up since then, so we want to make sure we cover all of our bases.
Gap, okay. I think that's my only question.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On these projects, do we just able to pick and choose which one we think that top priority that we need?
Yeah, for you guys, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is just a list and we pick.
This is the list that the park board has provided to you guys as their priorities, and then you guys pick and choose based off your budget and based off what you think is priority, and then we can go from there.
Okay. Do we get many people that assist us in I noticed of the Breezy Hill Park that Jamie Foxx have redone the basketball court
Yes, sir.
surfaces. So do we get donations from any other people to help with these parks?
I'm not 100% sure on that. That would be either a Sims question or a Glenn question. I'm not sure.
We have in the past, local dealerships.
Yeah, in the past, I'm not sure that development agreements stress this, but I know starting with Crossroads, it became a big stress. And the lighting at Breezy Hill was a development agreement with Platinum, I believe, which was great. And then I know that the college in Hattie, there was somebody talking at one point about a large donation, and I'm not sure if that's still in play to fund that, but if you know anybody, we need them.
Okay, are like under Ben Gill Park, you've got 1 through 6.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that in priority from the park board?
Yes.
Or it's just a list?
No, this is priority from the park board.
Okay, so number 1 would be the first thing that you're interested in?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I was at the Parks meeting on the 20th, and I don't know if you know, this is my last meeting here, because I'm off the Parks Board now, which means I'm not the ex officio here, but I was at the Parks Board meeting on the 20th, and these are the Parks Board's recommendations. I didn't take part in the voting because I was leaving, because I think if Glenn had his on here, we would have a bridge from the Excel Center to the softball field and turf on the soccer fields with a big lighting package. So this definitely was a very, very long discussion with lots and lots of questions and feedback. So this is the Parks Board, for sure. I mean, it was pretty, unanimous decision at the end, but there was a lot of debate based on need. And, number 6, where it says as long as city addresses maintenance concerns for the grass to grow, I think we just don't have enough people cutting grass right now. So if we water it, then we're in trouble. So you've been there. This is a good meeting to have after the Jubilee, because I think we all spent a lot of time at Ben Gill and got to see kind of what's going on out there. But this is definitely Parks Board opinion. Glenn was red-faced. That's why he's not here, isn't it? No, I'm just kidding. He's out of town.
Could I ask one follow-up from Matt? Sorry to
Yeah, go ahead.
take it away from you. Matt, is there anything on this list that the Parks Board has to have our cooperation to accomplish? Is there anything that's too big of a project for y'all to handle on your own?
I mean, nothing's too big to handle on their own. It's just it's a funding situation.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
saying, is there any one project that on its own would not be feasible for you guys without us?
The modular restrooms are already in the works. I think it's just a matter of figuring out, this board has already discussed funding those. It's just a matter of where do they go.
Okay.
So, the Parks Board prioritized, the community prioritized. We all know where the restrooms need to go. That's kind of one of those projects where we needed the restrooms. It's not a fun thing. It doesn't look like, oh, wow, look, we added restrooms, because people just think, well, why didn't you have them before? But, yeah, I mean, it's all just a funding situation. And one thing that was stressed, and I don't know that it was prioritized the same way that it was stressed of what our goal is as a paddock board. Replacing and fixing and maintenance is not really what we're here for, but those are the big needs. And so then I think it's up to this board to decide, do we want to kind of bend what we're supposed to do because of a lack of ability from no fault of one individual person necessarily? I mean, deferred maintenance. Or do you just stick to what our goal is and do pretty projects that are, a improvement? And all I would say from the Parks Board perspective is whatever you do, it's your prerogative. Just always keep in mind that maintenance and maintaining and an expense and anything that adds more labor on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is really going to just stress the park department. And they won't necessarily have a say. They're not going to turn down anything. So it's just a tough spot to be, because our job is not necessarily fixing. It's making pretty, but sometimes they can be the same thing.
Thank you. Before I get through the rest of it, I'll just show you guys the financials of what things are costing at this time. See, for Ben Gill has 2 options for lighting, solar and electrical. And for the next slide, you see Breezy Hill, Arley White, and King Street. Any questions?
don't have a question, but I do have a comment. So as we talk about resurfacing the tennis courts in particular, I've been asked by a lot of people if we can stripe that for pickleball. So I feel like this is a good time to just remind everybody that pickleball is very big, and having pickleball courts in Terrell would be a large attraction. So if we're gonna redo them anyway.
Might as well.
It's my understanding that we'll address, we'll take this information that you've compiled, and during our capital plan discussions,
Right.
we'll provide feedback on that. So
Okay.
thank you for the research and information you've provided.
Thank you.
Up next, I'd like us to discuss and consider FY 2023 proposed project expenditures, and for that, I'll call on Raylan Smith.
Okay, so what I'm bringing back to you is the original list that we looked at a couple of months ago, and the next two items kind of go hand in hand because this was a list of projects that we've mentioned over the past few months, and so just kind of put some pricing together. Some of this you could possibly fund this fiscal year, and so I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to vote on that if there's something to move forward, or any outstanding projects, a recommendation for which fiscal year, how you would like to project that out over the next couple of years. So again, we addressed some of the security concerns, possibly replacing some of the lighting, and looking at the flock camera system, expanding what the police department's currently putting in to include some key downtown areas. The parking lots there downtown, the city of Terrell has acquired the property. We have gone out for bid and should be demolishing structures within the next 30 to 45 days. And so you do have the parking lot design and construction. And I've listed that as two. So we do have the property on Moore and Rockwall. And then we have two lots here at the corner of Moore and Virginia. And there has been talk of possibly the lot on Moore and Rockwall being more of a green space rather than an open concrete lot. So we're looking at some different design possibilities for that end of town. Obviously, the uses on the east end of town would be the gateway into downtown, but just more of parking lot styles, because eventually there along South Alley, it would be one way and we would cut off being able to go on to Virginia. So that kind of feeds into how to direct traffic on that side of town. We have just the different streetscape elements if you wanted to look at adding benches or planters, or my precious friend who needs a bike rack. So if we could get at least one of those, I think he would be so happy, because he still runs into me every now and then and asks about it. And then I do have the quote for the downtown rooftop lighting. Also, we had talked about doing a possible central business district, kind of a property assessment. Mainly, it would be an inventory so that we would know what properties are available. Do you have grease traps, the types of businesses that could go into those properties, and know firsthand what it might take to get a new tenant into those properties downtown. And just some money set aside for a landscape project. I think the reality is that Complete Streets is definitely a few years away as far as design and definitely construction. And so in the meantime, how would we like to make some temporary improvements to our landscape downtown? So that's what I have.
You all remember that last time, again, we're all just kind of building momentum towards designing our new capital plan. And so we asked Raylan to go check on pricing on these things to help us prepare for that discussion. Any questions about these particular items?
Yeah, the downtown parking design and construction, that does not include the acquisition of that land, does it?
No.
And that's the That's the old former Queen's Donut, former Cowboys Quick, and the corner of Rockwall and more?
No, that property has already been acquired. That is not included in that price. This would be just the design and the actual construction of the parking lot.
So all three of those properties were acquired?
Yes.
Probably close to like $2 million total for the three, maybe a little more, plus 1.2. So we're talking almost $4 million for how many parking spaces?
20, 40, I mean, you could possibly get 100 if you went all parking that's available on all three lots.
Boy, oh boy. I mean, we had to have parking, I get it. I'm personally dealing with finding parking right now. It's not easy, so finding parking is not easy, but.
And the one thing that I do want to mention to this board, because parking is a very, very sensitive subject, land acquisition is a very sensitive subject. But one thing to keep in mind, especially dealing with downtown, is right now, South Alley, because we lease portion of that property from Union Pacific, we're able to allow parking along South Alley. We have to live in a world where we understand that UP could decide that that lease no longer exists and they need to come in and do the double rail or use that space. And at any given point, you have no parking to the south of downtown. And so while right now it appears excessive to put in concrete parking lots, at the end of the day, when you look at doing complete streets and the final design for South Alley and the possible double tracking, you know, it's a hard, change is hard, but we do have to prepare for the fact that there will be a day when that is not a viable parking lot along South Alley. So, and that's just the truth of what will eventually happen. So.
What are the plans for timing when we'll meet to put together a capital plan?
So this would be the last of gathering all of the data. What I would love is to get a little bit of feedback, even if it's just through email, so that we can put together something that y'all could look at, and let's look at phasing when we talk about construction and the actual phasing and which fiscal year would this money be spent. So what we want to do is just look at what I would, as the downtown project manager, I'm really focusing on what could we actually deliver and have people hold us accountable to for the next 3 years. I definitely want some milestones set in stone of, by this time, these are the types of activities, these are the types of business, you know, we should be able to make some huge announcements and a lot of progress. So given that and looking at construction timelines, I would say that we would have at least a draft of your capital plan, and we will start budget talks at our next meeting. We'll be looking at that.
So, Raylan, how, on the rooftop lights, from us approving to them shining at night, what's the timeline look like on that?
So I spoke to the gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he said once given the green light, it would take probably 60, 90 days to have everything up and running, because we did, part of his bid is he's going to go ahead and tie into our street lights, so we're not asking property owners, there's no wires anywhere. Allison and I were talking, and we were trying to link it to an event with the Sesquicentennial, and we have the mural walk September 16th. And, you know, BFTS is doing something that evening. You'll have the mural walk. We can have, you know, something downtown. And I think that we could turn the lights on September.
That would be great, but 90 days from that is 2 weeks from now. So I would love to have a proposal that we could vote on, because I think there's a lot of criticism and concern about the future of our downtown right now. And I think if we have something that's a product that we can produce to say, hey, this is good faith, it's growing pains, but we're trying and we're moving in a positive direction, I think that's important right now.
So that is why I worded the agenda the way that I did. So you do have a line item on there that allows you to make a recommendation for fiscal year '23 expenditures. And so if there is a project on this list that you want to approve, and, you know, obviously the funds, it would be pulled out of cash balance because it's not an allocated project, but we could pull that out of cash balance and, with a vote, you could allow me to move forward with that project.
I don't know that we have anything that shows us what our unallocated cash balance is right now.
Just a second. Let me go grab a budget book, because I can tell you what your beginning of your cash balance was October 1. So okay. Sorry about that. I had it in the last backup.
A question I had on Complete Streets.
Mhm.
We're starting to accept and understand that this is a long-term, you know, it's a marathon. The $400,000 environmental clearance, what is that?
So to have a project ready to be let by the state, you're going to have to do additional surveying, and a lot of it is site assessments, and so you have to have all of that prepackaged and ready before you hand it over to TxDOT. It's just the next step after design is to make sure that the property that you're looking at, building roads on, et cetera, has passed all of the site assessments.
We also pay for planning.
Fund balance at the end of the year for your 2023 budget, so going into October 1, your fund balance was $2.7 million.
So with that in mind, something else that jumps out to me, but I want y'all to give feedback, is this $100,000 allocated towards this downtown building assessment. I want y'all to read through what that is exactly and love your feedback on whether or not that's a priority right now.
It's hard to call it a priority, but a necessity. Can something be a necessity and not be a priority? Because it is a priority, it just seems like it's hard to explain that one to people that don't understand where you're spending that money. It feels like you're just putting money away. But really, every building owner that understands what their property can be and is properly educated on, because right now the assumption is, well, if I fix it up, my taxes go up and nobody's going to pay me rent. And there's a lot of truth to that. And we have to fix that narrative, because the downtown criticism narrative comes with a lot of people that say they're not anti-growth, but everything that comes out of their mouth is, this guy had to fix his property. Can you believe that? I'm like, yeah, it's going to fall down and hurt somebody. Like, sorry, we have to. So I read that and I kind of think this is where that goes, it's almost downtown education, master planning. The most powerful thing that people do is when they have coming soon signs and have a rendering. The problem is when those sit there for 3 years and nothing shows up, so that's why I'm scared to call it a priority, because this is a hurry up and show them here's what it can be, and then you still wait for, who knows how long, but.
I see an opportunity to design a funding program once we have this information where we can participate in helping these small businesses preserve their buildings. That's a priority.
Yep, and find a way to reward them by properly educating them on what funds are available without just saying, we ran into it across the street where he wanted $20,000 to fix the outside. Then he tore his building down and says, well, I need $120,000. And it was like, well, great, but you tore your building down. You're not even going to get the 20. And there's just a lot of confusion. They hear, oh, you're going to give me $400,000 to fix up my building. Like, no, hold on, wait. And so I think that kind of education, that kind of understanding will be huge.
I see value having this information going in, like, I hope this doesn't take a long time, because it would be really helpful to have this report going into our capital plan so that we can figure out how we can contribute, if we want to contribute to these individual buildings. And relatively large funding balance, $100,000, isn't going to cripple us by any means. And I feel like it's money we can't wait to spend, because the longer we wait for the report, the longer we wait to make a decision about what to do with that information, the longer we wait to fix these buildings.
Raylan, is there an active part in the city that goes out and tells people what's available, or are you leaving that to the chamber, economic development? With this report, then who takes it and works with it?
So with this report, what I'm hoping is that now opens the door for the city to invite property owners in or future tenants, and we're able to have conversations about this is what we see, and it not being the mean city who's telling you have to bring everything up to code, but now we can have a conversation of we've uncovered a lot of what needs to happen. Here is how we can help. You know, I think that not always is tax abatement the answer, because you definitely need that built into your budget so that you can slowly, as your appraisals go up. And so I think that this board and the city council exploring other ways that we can incentivize property owners and tenants, that it will be my charge to make sure that we're out meeting with these tenants and property owners, along with the building official and the fire marshal. Right now, we're trying to kind of coordinate all of those inspections that happen, so it doesn't appear that the city of Terrell is constantly in your building inspecting, trying to find something wrong. But maybe if we go in at the same time and we're all looking at the same thing, it's not as, you know, they just drop by throughout the year. So I think a lot of it's going to be the messaging and how we approach the property owners. And I think having something like this that just gives us a plan and a starting point will help.
If we voted and approved this, do you think there'd be any feedback or pushback from the property owners?
No,
wanting to do?
no, I don't think so. I've talked to a lot of the existing property owners, definitely have reached out to the tenants, everyone, even your property owners downtown, they know their buildings are falling in. They just don't really know what to do with that information right now. And so I don't think it would be looked at as, here's the city once again trying to close small business, but this would actually be a good thing, because it's something that we're helping property owners with. Because a lot of these property owners would not be able to do this assessment on their own. So.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough, I'll share some real personal numbers with you just so you can kind of get an idea of downtown. We're about finished with our building at 107 Westmore. We purchased that building. It was condemned by the city. It had a hole in the roof the size of a car. The water went down, ran a hole in the ground. It has a brick footing around the whole thing, so it was like a swimming pool it really was. The windows were fogged up. It was so humid. It was terrible. So we were able to get that building for really cheap, like $75,000. Now I'm thinking that was way too much, but that purchase price is probably not even possible, because that was before the big boom and inflation and everything. But we spent we're going to come in right around $300,000 to fix that building, which is way over budget, and we did a lot of crazy things that most people won't do and won't have to do. But just generally speaking, an individual that owns a building like that, if they already own it, if they were to spend $400,000 and get a note for 80%, 20 years, 8% rate, their total cost a month is probably going to be close to like $4,000. So they're putting in, almost $100,000 cash to do it, and then they have a $4,000 a month note on a 4,000 square foot building. The risk is huge. I mean, if you find a tenant to pay $5,000 a month in downtown Terrell, you're breaking records, So this is a situation where there is no incentive, because there's just massive risk. And so we have to find a way to fix this incentive. And that can be done a lot of ways. And, you know, the building doing inspections, that stuff is, people just don't understand. Like you don't, when you watch tornadoes and you see these tornadoes hit these towns and they say, it was a F5 and there's 2 people injured in the hospital and no deaths. That's because of inspectors. And then you see an earthquake in a third world country and there's 30,000 people dead. That's because of no inspectors. I mean, there's a reason that they do this. And yes, Bobby doesn't even like to answer the phone when I call because I'm always calling saying, do we have to? And he has to say yes. Imagine if he said, no, you don't need to put sprinklers. I've got a place full of people and it burns down and 15 of them die. Guess who gets sued? The city of Terrell. And it's going to cost a lot more than for us to find a way to work this. But it's just the real cost. I mean, our taxes went from $1,400 a year to $9,600 a year after doing this remodel. And we're probably undervalued still. Like if I wouldn't sell the building for $400,000 right now, and that's what they have me valued at. And so that's a hard cost. So you're spending the money, then your costs go up. And so when you are redoing this, and when we did this, there's a lot of ways to do it. When we did this in Forney a few years back, the EDC purchased 6 properties. They remodeled 6 properties, and then they rented those properties at a massive monthly loss to incubate those businesses. And then after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they sold the buildings. They gave the tenant first dibs, and they sold them at market value. And when they sold them at market value, the agreement was you have to maintain this kind of rent for this many years. And it works, and it's expensive. We don't have the kind of money to do that, but that's one way to do it. The other way is to help with design, help with planning. Tax breaks are great, but again, that's $8,000 a year. You're taking it from a $4,000 rent to a $3,200 rent just to break even. Subsidizing rent's always a possibility. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I'm just letting you know that's the obstacle. So yeah, these building owners are slumlords, but it's scary to not be. I mean, I know people that built a garage at their house and their taxes went up crazy. I mean, it's like you do something good and it's like you're punished. And that's the issues we're dealing with. And so if we really want to see downtown, we have to find a way to allow people to fix their building, not go broke, and then find a tenant to come in and not go broke. And once you start getting them, it really, it takes 5 really good operating retail restaurant businesses before number 6 doesn't need help. It's no longer as risky. And that's why when you have the Lyric building, the old pawn shop, and the Baylor Hospital, what was it? Whatever. You know what I'm talking about, the Hard Bodies building. When one person owns those and they're taking those risks, we do have to listen to them a little bit and say, okay, what are your problems? And we don't have to help them, we don't have to fix their problems, but we need to know what their problems are because that's a problem that everyone's gonna have. And my partner on my building down there is a construction, so thank God, because I bet you we would have spent 20% more if you didn't get things at cost. But I always laugh when I read it on Facebook, people talking about it. I'm like, I know why you didn't do it, because right now he's paying nothing in taxes. And, if you're gonna lose $1,200 a month, that's better than losing $4,000 a month, I guess. But that's where we're at on the downtown. So this $100,000, if that can help just let people know, here's what you're really looking at, get rid of all of the, just the misinformation. The city's putting a huge investment into that city park downtown, what's it called? City Square? Sims Plaza? Something?
I call it it's just downtown.
Downtown.
It's all downtown. It is not a separate name. It is,
If that starts booming, then all of these little things, they just,
he's gonna get me in trouble.
desire just goes through the roof. And that's why people don't want to sell too. It's like, well, I don't want to sell because it's going to be worth something. I just want you to make it worth something first. So it's tough, but I do, this is my last meeting, so I don't mind telling you, this is really, the downtown stuff is very important, even to the parks. Someone comes here and they eat downtown, maybe they're going to go to play pickleball, maybe they'll go, and Breezy Hill feels like it ties it all together. And that's the prettiest park in town, trees and everything, so. It is a big plan, and I'm glad y'all are all on this. knowing that y'all do this, and I hope that people leave y'all alone and let y'all keep doing wonderful things, because this paddock board is, man, this is gonna be the difference, for sure.
Does anything preclude us from taking action today on approving some of these?
No, you would just need to specifically list the project, and what I would say in the motion is just an amount not to exceed that budget price, and then that way, if it comes in differently, I would bring that back to you.
Okay, so looking at some of these individually, Hillary, you mentioned the downtown rooftop lights, and this board has discussed that previously. Is there any heartburn to approving that not to exceed today?
I keep forgetting, I do this in court too. I don't know that I want to say heartburn. I have pause just because we haven't seen a presentation. I mean, I can imagine what it's gonna look like.
I will, he sent me a video. I'll forward that through email to y'all. They just finished a project in Hyco, and he did a video showing the different, because you can do the different colors, and so I'll send you a video of who it is that quoted me on
Your
that.
thoughts?
Very impressive. It actually was cheaper than I thought it would be, which was great. I thought that he had a lot of really good ideas, especially going down the side street so that, it's not just the front, but that we're able to wrap the streets along Catherine and Francis. And, I was very impressed with,
So that 175 would be from Virginia to Rockwall and one block away from Moore Avenue. on every
down the streets, street front.
Both sides.
Yes, so there is a 5-year guarantee, and the 175 includes 4 maintenance checks throughout the year. And so the maintenance, of course, I would put into the downtown budget after our initial, but this will pay for the 4 checks the first 12 months.
I don't know how it works city-wise. If Paddock pays for it, it's still a city project. It's all Paddock's money. And the reason I ask is because Forney did this, and it was done as a grant to a downtown business association. So they paid for it, but they gave the money to an association who didn't pay the vendor. Then we had a storm that knocked all the lights off. Downtown business didn't have insurance to cover. If it would have stayed the city, they would have had insurance to cover. So that's, I just want to make sure that the insurance, because it's a windstorm can blow $175,000 off, and we
Yeah, no, this will definitely be a listed asset for the city.
I think that clears up any concerns I had.
Okay.
We'd all like to see the video.
I will send the video as soon as I get to my office.
Should we approve these individually?
That would be great, yeah.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the expenditure not to exceed $175,000 for the purchase, installation, maintenance of downtown rooftop lights.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. I'd also like to have a discussion to consider the downtown building code and preservation line item not to exceed $100,000. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Or entertain questions or concerns. I'll be ready for that one.
Raylan, tell me what the mechanism for gathering that data is. Do we hire outside consultants to come in and do that study
Yes.
for us? Okay.
So you would work with an architectural firm that would come in and help do renderings of the buildings, and then they would also work hand in hand with our building official and fire marshal to make those recommendations and kind of inventory what's available within the building, example, grease traps, and then they would go in and kind of categorize how each of those buildings would fall.
So it would be for every building, it would be an exterior rendering of what it could be, what it would take to get to that, what the leasing breakdown would be after that. So it would be basically a business plan for every single
For
building.
every single building, yes, ma'am.
Which outside developers are begging us for, versus them having to come out of pocket individually for these. They want to be able to, either for their own personal investment, or if they own the building next door and they want somebody else in a complementary business to be next to them, they want to be able to tell that person. And we've all had an idea of a restaurant we want downtown. We could take this package to that restaurant and say, do any of these buildings, vacant buildings, suit your needs?
What kind of timeline would it take to do this kind of project? I mean, it's not a month-long project.
No, what I've seen when I spoke to the EDC over in Ennis, and they did this in Salina as well, it takes about 3 to 4 months to gather the data. And so generally, by 6 months, you have a full report that you can start presenting, so.
And what if a business owner says, I don't want this done?
So that's a little tricky because we could technically write our own assessment based on fire marshal inspections. There are inspection reports for every building downtown, and that is public information. So I would, of course, reach out to property owners first and kind of explain why we are doing this. But at the end of the day, if we wanted to just sit down and write a report, we have inspection reports for each of these buildings. So there's nothing to prevent us from doing a master plan and showing an outside rendering. We could still list what amenities we know are available in that building based on past inspections of being in there. So we would, check the big boxes. Does it have a fire sprinkler system? Does it have a grease trap? Those are the types of things that we could inventory without even accessing the building. So.
Tenants are gonna be the ones that get a little scared. They're gonna see this as rents are about to go up, So they'll go from complaining about their leaky roof to complaining about paying too much. I get it. So we do need to be very sensitive to that, helpful to that, and hopefully, if they're a good tenant, find a way to keep them in there, keep them paid.
And I do think, just from the conversations that I've had, some of our tenants would appreciate that the city is being a little proactive, because I think sometimes they kind of feel like, the tenants feel like they're on an island on their own because they know there are things that need to be done, but out of fear of lease or this not working out, but they do let the city know. So I think your tenants may see this as helpful to them sometimes.
Downtown isn't a TIF currently. Is it the same as Crossroads?
Yeah, it's within the TERS number 1.
We start to see 5, 10, 15 of these buildings get redone and go from 100,000 on the tax rolls to 500,000. We need to really push that forward to make sure they reinvest that money into downtown and not, which I think right now they're probably investing significantly more than what they're getting.
Their financial plan right now, I think was 16 million dedicated, and so TERS is where the land acquisitions and some of the downtown capital expenses have come, but the overall plan was a full 16 million.
I think based on what you said, that there are people coming to town that want to know what could be done to their building, I'm a little more positive about it. I mean, that's the way we're going to get people, it seems to me.
This seems like an extension, basically, of the downtown comprehensive plan to me.
And as a board, I feel compelled for us, for all the reasons that Matt said, for us to figure out a way to help participate in some of these, I think about the roofs. Roofs.
Sure, but yeah, roofs.
That wouldn't be detrimental, extremely detrimental to tax value, but will preserve these buildings long overdue deferred maintenance. And that, that's a lot for a small business owner to take on. It's not a lot for us to take on potentially. So I hope we'll look for those opportunities once that we have that information in front of us. At the end of the day, these are not our buildings, these are their buildings. So to Mary's point, it's their decision to make, but we want to be in a position to help.
based on the discussion that we've had, I would be willing to make that motion not to exceed $100,000.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, the motion passes. I'm going to keep going just because we have this information in front of us and we're sitting on a large fund balance right now. So $50,000 jumps out at me. I don't know what a downtown landscape project includes, but I appreciate that it follows the downtown master plan recommendations. Raylan, can you tell us more about that?
So I had just put in money for, we did clean out all of our flower boxes, but that is all we did. And so it might be nice to go in, and whether it is a large agave cactus or something to fill the space in the flower boxes along Highway 80. Obviously, it needs to be something that does not require lots of water or maintenance right now, but I would like to give y'all some recommendations. I would like to have someone from a nursery come and give us recommendations of what could be placed in those boxes. Just something very simple and clean that would give us a little bit of life downtown until we have a real plan moving forward.
I assume the water does not work any longer, the sprinkler systems.
No, they took those lines out, so not necessarily, I would never recommend us putting them back because so, there's, as part of our downtown grooming, I know that the guy that Glenn was using, once a week, he would go and water what he could, but I think at this point, we find something that needs even less water than that. And, but I think it would say a lot just to have something clean and nice and at least fill the empty boxes. Mm-hmm.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
We're talking about a 3-year timeline before we tear everything up, and we're talking about $50,000. The math is not mathing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, cost-benefit analysis on that, but we have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to have a little more details about what that looks like.
I would love some recommendations from the board as far as if you have any contacts or if you have ideas of what could go in there.
I'm sure you could hire a landscape architect.
Yes, we could.
Because if my gut tells me we're 10 years away from tearing up 80, if that indeed moves forward. And so that's, lifespan of a plant, a lot longer than any plant at my house. I don't know that I want to stop at just planting things in those planters. I understand the irrigation situation, but the planters themselves are very dated to me. Not just the median, but the corners are very dated. And so I don't know, we could quickly get ahead of ourselves. I'm not talking about $1 million landscaping project. But 50 almost feels, we're not going to be wowed after we spend $50,000. We're just going to be glad it's not empty.
What I could do is use our project engineer for Complete Streets to see if they would do a phasing approach for the landscape and see what recommendations they could come back to us with. And then that way, if there is anything that can be saved or moved over 5-10 years from now, at least it's the same person that's planning each phase of this. So I could ask them to put together a task order for a Phase 1 landscape design for Complete Streets along Highway 80. And then we could really concentrate on the core area. And then, but also maybe past that, once we're happy with that, you could potentially just combine it with the Complete Streets design. That's one thought.
And I think timeline's important too, because we're talking about $50,000 over 10 years versus over 5 years. That's a different weight.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta think about seasons. We're gonna plant these, we're gonna shoot to plant in the fall.
I mean, I have a black thumb, so it would definitely be the landscape architect's recommendations. So I love that things are pretty, but I do not even pretend like I can grow ivy. So,
Because if we could have something, just like you said,
Mhm.
kind of come back, this is to me something, again, that might be good for the September
mhm.
timeframe to have in place, just so it's another step to help celebrate.
Okay.
But with long-term, we want to make sure we're not investing and then it's just going to get.
So how about this? What I can do is reach out to our project engineer, and like I said, because this would be with our Complete Streets contract, I will go ahead and have them make some recommendations of the plants and also funding recommendations, and I can bring that to y'all during our next meeting. And then I'll put something on there if, you want to expend this year's funding, we can do that then. But then that way you actually have the plants and everything the next time. So I can have them just go ahead and design a phase one of landscape.
Medians and corners, right, is what we're looking at?
I would feel much better with that.
Perfect.
All right, we'll not proceed with funding for now. Anything else on this list, security, otherwise we want to discuss?
I could also see if they wanted to add any of those streetscape recommendations whenever they're doing the rendering for the landscape, maybe, okay. Yeah, okay,
And placement.
right, I'll have them add streetscape,
Oh, yeah.
can do that. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll add that.
Lessons for people to know how to use them.
Signage, lots of signage, okay, I'll do that.
All right, any other comments for Raylan in terms of the proposed project expenditures? Raylan, do you have a separate discussion item for considering our capital work plan?
It was just all kind of together, so we talked about both. I wanted to make sure that y'all could make motions if you wanted to, so we're good.
Thank you. At this time, we will adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following. 551.072, deliberations regarding real property, and Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. And I'll call on Raylan.
Okay.
This time, we'll reconvene into regular session. No action is needed, as the items before us were for discussion purposes only. Any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your